what's going on? This is Joel. We're calling this Technically Nerdy Podcast, and this is a bit of a test. So this is Joel. You know me as 3D printing nerd. We're going to bring in a couple people you might know. First, over there is Sean. Hey, Sean.
Hi guys.
How you doing, man?
I'm on the board cutting things.
You're cutting up the stuff. Thanks for doing that.
No problem.
You sound great.
Oh,
and over
thanks.
here is our guest. This is Pooch.
Hey,
man.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Joel. How are you, man?
So for those that don't know who you are, Pooch, could you give a little background?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Alan Puccinelli. You have a last name like Puccinelli. People just inherently call you Pooch. So
were
I
you
go with
like
it.
The Pooch?
Pooch, the Pooch. Well, I'm sure at one point my dad was probably the Pooch. My brother's been the Pooch. But I'm the Pooch in this.
Thing.
It's familiar.
Yeah.
Do you have a pooch? Do you have a pooch at home?
I don't currently. I have had Pooches.
Okay.
Aw.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Aw.
but a lot of people. I own a small company called Repkord. I make storage solutions for filament and accessories for 3D printing.
I've heard it's called a rep box.
It is called a rep box.
It's a snazzy name.
I have a very, very secret sauce title to, adding titles to things where I just take rep and I throw it in front of something, and so the rep box is just the natural evolution.
Well, you're just
of that.
like Prusa himself. Prusa does the
I
Prusa things.
I
You
couldn't
have
possibly
the
be
rep
that guy.
things.
That guy's epic. The rep things?
The
yeah,
rep things.
The rep things, yeah.
Well, obviously you have Repkord, and you're a giant nerd, and I think it's appropriate that we kick off the inaugural Technically Nerdy Podcast.
I'm
With you.
honored. I'm honored and privileged to be your guinea pig in
Kind of fun.
this journey.
You did make me a tasty beverage, and so there was no way that I was going to be able to properly pay you back unless I put you on a microphone.
Unless we podcasted for it. Yes, sure.
Actually,
That's standard.
I have some questions here. I
Do-
do. I have some
do you?
questions.
Pre-prepared even.
Yeah, I prepared just a little bit.
Hit me, brother.
Oh, really? Well, I'm not going to smack
Not
you. but I
literally.
hope
Come
that-
on.
I don't know.
So
I'd-
listen.
I'd pay to see that.
Listen. Regardless of
Thanks,
what Sean
Sean.
just said,
Thanks.
it's $5.99.
Feel the
pay-per-view.
Yeah.
You are a terrific, fantastical nerd.
Well,
And
I'm no
I'm
Joel
saying that
Telling.
as a, well, I mean, it's hard to compete when you eat as much as me. So one of the things I've always wanted to ask you is where did it begin? What did you do for fun as a kid?
I think one of the most formative moments from my youth would be when I first got into computer building, modding, call it what you will.
Computer building and modding. Modding. I
Modding.
totally
call
it
it.
that.
Yeah, sure. Call it that. My dad was in the tech space. Grew up in Silicon Valley. He was a MIS manager, IT manager, whatever you want to call it these
What
days.
is MIS?
Information systems manager.
Oh, okay.
So he was running the computers at actually like an oil drilling company at the time.
Jeez.
So he was running IT basically, and so he was bringing home computers in the early to mid '80s before pretty much everybody had one in the house.
Okay.
And I remember vividly how he would dial up, dial in to connect to their servers and stuff at work and all, and you hear that, and then there'd be this moment where you'd go to get on the phone to call somebody and you'd hear the modem and my dad would be screaming, "Get off the phone, I'm on the computer." We had the one phone line.
I remember.
Yeah. So anyway, I grew up and he was bringing home computers and pretty early on, he was like, "Hey, there's these cool games that you can play on these computers," and we'd go to try to put a game on one of the computers he brought home, and there wasn't enough RAM in it to support it. And he's like, "You know what? We'll go down to the store." And this was even before the time of Fry's Electronics, where it was like a little small computer shop. I don't know. Did you ever have the computer shops?
Your story echoes mine quite a bit, and so I know exactly what you're
Right,
talking
and
about.
those were cool places,
were
right?
cool.
You go in there, and it was like run by this guy that was probably like a hoarder, and he would just have all these little cool computers, obviously, and gizmos and stuff everywhere. And it was very, very rough, right? Just
Absolutely.
Racks.
The best kind, though. Not like nefarious.
No, yeah, but you know what I mean. It wasn't like going into a nice polished store the way it is now, right? It was like very much this guy's store.
There was no polish there.
There's no polish. But, he was the guy that had all the computer stuff. And then we're like, hey, we need this RAM for, this computer. We only had 1024, K or whatever. We needed 4096, baby. We need 4 megs to run this particular game. And so we go down and pay probably some inordinate sum for, 4 gigs or 4 megs of RAM. So that's what got me into like. It was always like the next best game was coming out, and you had to upgrade the computer. Either the video card didn't support it, or there wasn't enough storage space. So really quickly, I started to get into, let's get a bigger hard drive. Let's get a hard drive, right? It started with everything was on the 5-inch floppies, and then it would go to.
I remember those.
Yeah, and then get into hard drives and all that stuff. So I got into building that, and then there was this one time I remember vividly where my dad was at work, and I was trying to, I don't remember what the game was, but I was trying to run something and the video card wasn't supported. And there was a box.
It was Frogger. It was
probably Frogger.
It was Frogger.
or Dig Dug.
I hate when that Frogger lags, man.
Yeah, no, we had an Atari too, but anyway, the video card wasn't supported, and my dad had brought home a box of parts over time that were just pulled from various computers at work and stuff like that. And I remember digging around, and I found another video card that had, it was like the wrong input for the monitor that we had at the time, but it had more RAM. It had more video RAM. And it was the same number of pins on the chip for the RAM unit. Like, it was, because they were literally silk screened with like how much storage. And I was thinking, well, maybe I can pull this RAM out of this video card and put it in this one.
Did you?
I did. I tried that, and that was my first experience with the blue smoke. and it was, and I remember thinking my dad was gonna be so mad, when he got home, because I completely destroyed probably both the RAM. Then I ended up with like 2 non-operational video cards, and I told him what I had done when he got home, and he kind of laughed, and he's like, "That's actually really creative, and I'm glad you tried that, and we'll go find the card that we need."
That's fantastic.
Yeah, but and it was a good formative moment for me, and so that that's probably one of my earliest memories of being nerdy.
Oh yeah, well that seems like that is your first true taste of like tech.
Yeah.
Right, because I mean you can appreciate tech and technical things, but once you flip that switch and you talk about modifying something, in this case it was swapping a chip. Right. But still, you're talking about modifying it. All of a sudden, that sends you down a completely different path.
Totally. Yeah, and you learn that just because something has the same physical number of pins does not mean that it's compatible, right? So it's a good learning experience. Of course, it's can be an expensive experience sometimes, but that's how you learn.
I had a 286 motherboard with a meg of RAM on it.
Right.
And it had, I think it was 4 banks of nine chips. There was 8 chips.
Right.
And 1 parity chip.
Yes.
Right? And so it had a meg in it, and so I went and bought more chips.
Right.
To put it in. And these are 10-pin chips or whatever that are sitting into the slot. And then I had 4 megs of RAM, and I was like, this is great. Some 286 system.
How cool. I don't need to get a whole new computer. That's why this is why we're learning here as we go too. But I know how great, right? What a cool feeling to know that you can take something you have and make it better without necessarily having to just scrap it and go get a whole brand new one.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And then you get hooked on that feeling. How do I keep making this better? I want to play the next best thing. I want to get the next game. And it's just nonstop since then, right? It's like there's always a faster processor, a newer card, whatever it might be.
Well, that's obviously, if that's where you start, that just lends itself to then growing up and approaching problems in a very unique way. And I think more people are starting to approach problems in a similar fashion, where it's not just like the path to the fix is nearly as cool as having the fixed thing.
Right. The journey.
Well, I mean, everybody says the journey is,
Well, okay, yeah. So cliche, but
it's very cliche,
but it's true.
But it's so true.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's a recent example of something you've applied this method of thinking, and you got a good result, a positive result? The whatever you did was a success, but the journey to that success was as good, if not more exciting.
Oh, that's a good question. Something that's recent that the journey is more positive. Wow. Okay. Does it? So maybe to jump away from the technical stuff. So the building of the development of business. Like I don't know. I mean, like what?
Yeah. Well, here's one of my questions was.
Yeah.
Was what drove you to help with PPE printing in the capacity that you did? Because when you jumped into that, you weren't just putting printers towards the effort. You stood up an entire multi-volunteer effort of sterilization and collection and distribution.
Yeah.
And so what was more exciting about that? Being a part of the solution or developing that solution?
I think I think developing, certainly being part of it is great and flattering, and I always say that I don't feel like I innovate the way that a lot of people do. Like most of what I do is built on the shoulder of giants, right? And so Prusa started the idea of like, hey, let's do face shields because it was controversial about masks and stuff at the time. Maybe this isn't the best way to help. Maybe it's not protecting people as much as they want. But a face shield is pretty clear, that hey, this is a barrier.
Literally.
This is thank you. Pun intended. Wait. Goodness, we have Sean for the comedy.
No, wait.
Oh.
No, which one is it? Is it?
It's the bird.
Hit the right button. The right button.
There it is.
There it is.
Wait, one more. Say it again.
Rim shot.
Say it again.
Literally.
We'll get that in post, right?
No.
Well,
so
anyway.
listen, all of the buttons are different colors, and I know I can label them because they give me templates to put over them.
Okay.
But legit, like, that was better.
Just you welcome along on the journey, everybody.
Yeah. Speaking of journeys.
Yeah, that was a journey. That was a long way around.
I didn't mean to interrupt you though.
It's
Bruce
fine.
started it with the face shields.
It's fine. He started with the face shields.
They were clear, Sean
I said, this is a great idea. Let's not reinvent the wheel. And if I didn't learn on that journey, that was a heck of a journey. So for 3 months, the first thing is like I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Right? I sat down. I was at a co-working space that was in a maker space at the time, and I thought I was just going to make a couple, 100 of these while I had time. Sure. And I said like, I sat down and somebody else was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm doing this. Well, can I help? And then 2 became 4, became 6, became 8, and before I know it, it becomes this social engineering experiment more than anything, right? So it's like the making part of that is pretty rudimentary. You can print the frame, and you can cut. It's 3 parts. I don't know. I wouldn't trivialize it, but it's a pretty simple make, right?
Yeah.
Or if you're doing the version you did, it's like you can get a transparency film and cut it out, and right. But to do it in a meaningful volume repeatedly is just a whole nother challenge, right? Because like anything, at some point when you try to scale it and get so many hands in the cookie jar, you're gonna come across a lot of issues, right?
Well,
and you brought up sterilization being safety issues, all kinds of things.
But with scaling, you're talking about scaling a volunteer effort. If you had a business, if this was a business and you had dollars and you could reimburse people monetarily for time, like an employee,
sure,
it would be completely different. But you were having to scale up and manage a 100% volunteer effort,
right? And when you're dealing with volunteers, it's like one, you feel like, well, everybody's just helping out of the goodness of their heart, and so it's just because somebody's volunteering doesn't mean that they're helpful all the time, which is a kind of a weird realization to come to.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're more disruptive to the process than they are helpful, and you have to have
just tightening some things. Sorry.
Yes.
Oh my.
Sorry about that.
Sometimes they're more disruptive to the process, and it's a sad fact of life, but you're almost better off saying thank you for helping, but we're no longer in need of your services, and that's a hard thing to do when, like I said, I care about other people and I'm helping and I don't want to hurt people's feelings, but at the same time, I can't deal with people fighting over the best way to do this or what we should be doing. Like, we have a process.
Right.
This is how we do it. You're welcome to do it the way that we'd like, and if you have a better way and you'd like to try to do your own thing, then you may go do that. But this is what we're doing here, and so the managing of the people and the process was far and away the biggest challenge of that journey.
Was it hard to walk away?
Yeah, it is, because at no point did the requests for these things really stop, and it had to be we've had to scale back or wind down or whatever, and my desire to help, it's like it's hard to turn people away. That everyone was like, we're doing music programs with kids and we're required to have some kind of protection and we can't find these things anywhere. Can you help? And it's like you do what you can, but at some point you gotta call it, right?
So what ended up happening? What the effort that you so what I find interesting though, before you go off and tell me about that, your effort helped spark Destin at Smarter Every Day.
Yeah.
And your effort helped spark Linus Media Group in what they were doing with some Prusa machines that were shipped for another reason, and then they were like, oh crap, pandemic, hey, let's help. And so I mean, it's really awesome that happened, but eventually you did have to walk away. And what happened to the effort? Where is that effort now?
Well, I think that at the time it had come to kind of a natural conclusion based on how quickly, not how quickly, but the fact that the major providers of PPE, most of that stuff generally comes from China. So a lot of the supply chain stuff finally kicked back in. The amount of cases were dialing back. And so when we saw the number of requests coming our way starting to decline, we said, this is probably a good point to wrap it up. So I think it did come to a natural conclusion. I didn't expect for it to take as long. I really thought I was going to maybe be filling a need for a short period of time until the major suppliers of these things were able to get their product back to market, and it just took a lot longer than I think we thought. But how great was it that the movement that Prusa started, created that domino effect where it's like I was able to stand something up, and other people saw, hey, this seems to be working. Like let's go with it.
You essentially had an in-progress blueprint on how to do it.
Yeah, and actually I spent a lot of time in the later months of it bringing other people up to speed on what works for us. But I was very clear that, what works for me, you may not find that to work for you. So I always like to disclaim that. Like, I don't claim to be the expert around all that.
I know, but it's still interesting to hear the experience.
Yeah.
What is that? Oh, that's the printer.
That's the printer. I was like, what is that?
Oh, interesting.
So we have a belt machine here just printing away, and every once in a while a sound comes through, and it's the machine saying, hey, I'm here.
I'm doing things.
Don't forget about me.
I'm doing things.
I'm going to start the next thing.
I'm working for you.
So last question regarding the PPE stuff.
Sure.
Before we nerd out about something else.
And we will.
Would you do it again?
If called to service, would I do it again? I would do it again.
Knowing that,
yeah,
is there something very specific, just right off the top of your head, that you would change, or did it go well enough that you would continue course?
I think the majority of the blueprint was sound. I think I would be a little more discerning about vetting the volunteer force.
Okay.
Good.
That's good to know. No, that is fantastic to know.
Yeah.
But I would like to move on to something else.
Sure.
Because I find this really interesting, and it's something that we could nerd out to for a bit.
Let's do it.
You drive a Tesla.
Yeah, I do.
And I don't. I have a gas-powered car, and it makes sounds when it drives, which still, to my mind. But listen, when did you get your Tesla, and why did you get one?
Yeah, so I have been not only a Tesla fan, but an electric vehicle fan, an EV fan for years. And so before I had the Tesla, I had a Nissan Leaf. I've driven probably most EV. Well, there's more and more coming out every year. But
Sure.
I'm very familiar with or have driven most EVs. I honestly believe that there will come a day, probably in the not too distant future, 10 years to 15 years. I was talking to Sean about this earlier.
Yeah.
That's still pretty far away.
It is and it isn't. I don't
It's
know.
far away until it's here, and then it's like, wow,
Well,
it's here.
I think we're at the point now where we've reached parity, and that it actually, if you look at the dollars and cents of having an EV versus a traditional combustion engine car, that a case can be made that the total cost of ownership is the same or less in some instances.
Oh, that's what you mean by parity. I see.
Yes.
Okay.
So parity that a lot of times the argument was that an EV isn't really as a cost effective thing, but I think we're getting to the tipping point where people have trust in it, thanks to companies like Tesla and other EV producers out there. I really believe it's the future. I really believe that there is at some point, nobody knows exactly when it is, but we will reach a point where we do not have enough oil to produce to produce the fuel we need for traditional combustion engine cars.
Right.
And that may be further away. New deposits are discovered and stuff, but the end game there is not good, right? And so it's like, let's find another solution. Right now, there's a lot of arguments that can be made that hey, batteries can be toxic and all this other stuff, but or that the power that is being generated uses mixes of fuels that are creating the electricity, so that it's really not that much cleaner.
Right.
But you have the option to. It can be cleaner. It can be.
You can
all
do
solar.
hydropower. You can be all solar. It can be all wind. Right.
Right. So those arguments are, to me, just excuses in allowing a larger industry, the oil industry, to try to prolong its existence. But that, not to get into the politics of it, the tech side is. I'm really passionate about it because it's a lot. I like a lot of the things about it, the ownership of it, that are not necessarily always talked about. Everybody talks about how the acceleration is just insane and it's awesome. It's an awesome performance car. But from a practicality standpoint, very few people really hone in on the fact that the maintenance is zero. It is as close as it. You don't.
So you
have
said
to do
there's no oil to change.
There's no oil to change. There is there's no maintenance in the way that we're not replacing.
So you're 30,
belts
60, 90.
No, that's not a thing. Like I change. I put air in the tires and I add wiper fluid. I owned I leased the Nissan Leaf for 3 years, and when I went to sell the thing, because they had a glut of them when it was done, that Nissan was like, will you please just buy this off of us? We will give it. Like, they literally sold it to me for $6,000, and I turned around and sold it for $10,000. Like,
that's amazing.
Within a week. And when the guy comes over and he's like, well, will you pop the hood for me? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And I popped the hood, and there were cobwebs in where like the motor and stuff were, because I've never been in there. There was no need to be in there. And how cool is that, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing because obviously I have to fill up my gas tank.
Yep.
When the tank is near empty. Well, you have to charge it when the batteries are near depleted.
Sure.
But I know that with your car, you have supercharging, which is a faster, higher capacity charging.
Yes, absolutely. So there's multiple levels of how quickly you can charge, and so traditionally, when you're charging at home, you are using a setup that uses your AC home system and converts it within the car, the same way that your phone. Well, that is a little bit.
Oh, meaning if you take home 110 and you plug it into your car takes 110 and converts it into whatever DC voltage
to charge
it
the
needs.
batteries. Right.
I see.
Right. There's an internal charger, right?
Inverter.
Because the plug, it's just wiring from the mains, right? There is no actual charger system. They call them EVSEs, the electrical vehicle supply equipment, but really they're just a bunch of safety equipment on the wires. There is nothing that is inverting electricity in that unit.
Okay.
All that is in the car. The same way your phone has all of its charging battery management stuff inside the phone.
I see. Oh, similar. Okay.
Yeah.
But then people can use 220 at home, right?
You can use 110, you can use 220. So 220 is a whole nother level faster. So it would literally take 3 days to charge my entire car from 0 to full on a 110 15 amp.
How long with 220?
So 220 is about 6 hours.
Seriously?
Yes. And 6 to 8. It depends on it. There's different things that contribute to the state of charge. But then there's these superchargers that are on the wild that are called level 3, which are direct current So they're bypassing the charging system in the car, and they're feeding direct current directly into the battery pack. And they do that at a insane amount of power at a very quick thing, to the point where the newer units are actually have like water cooling built into them, because the wires themselves will get that hot from having that much power flowing through them.
So there has to be, because I've never been to a supercharging station in a Tesla.
Sean and I were at one today.
We sure were.
So then what are the safety mechanisms in place? Because if you have that much high power, I mean, I'm not going to lick it, but is there...
You're not going to lick it.
How do they guard against accidental discharge?
Well, there's a number of safety systems in place before the high voltage system will actually kick in. So there's a whole communication system that not only... when you plug in, the beauty of Tesla is they really pride themselves on just being turnkey. Like, it knows where your car is and how often it's charged and all that stuff. So it knows when I plug in that supercharger that it's plugging into Alan's car, and it says, okay.
Is it Alan's car or is it Pooch's car?
Pooch. It has a name.
Okay. What is the name?
Mr. Fusion. His name is Mr. Fusion.
Of course it is.
Oh,
so
boy.
It knows. The supercharger knows that it's being plugged into Mr. Fusion.
And and I happen to. So it's an older Model S, and I was grandfathered into the free Supercharging for Life program, which is really awesome. Honestly,
which we'll talk about in just a moment.
We can talk about it in just a moment. But that's how So it knows it's me, and it says like, okay, there's not going to be any charge for this. But if I had a newer Tesla or whatever, it would be tied to my account, and it monitors how much power is pulled, and then it charges you accordingly, and it just bills it to your account. And so you set up your credit card ahead of time and all that stuff. And there's really nothing to do other than plug in and then go away. And it tells you on your screen how much power you've taken and what it cost you.
See, if we were to do that for gasoline engines, that's almost like my car would talk to the fuel pump through the fuel pump.
Yep.
And then get a readout. So your car essentially holds your account.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas
it has a unique ID, and
when I go to pay for gas, my credit card holds my account.
Yeah. So your credit card is tied to your Tesla account, and your Tesla account.
Well, just like when you buy apps on the App Store.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The reason why your situation is amazing, the free supercharging, is because, now correct me if I'm wrong, you can plan a trip from A to B.
Yeah.
And it will tell you where you need to stop and how long you need to stop for.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
Because it knows where the supercharging stations are.
Yeah.
And obviously, if they put new ones in, it's connected, so it can get updated.
Not only that, but it knows how many of the stalls are available.
Right, because it'll tell you like how many people are taking that route, right? So, or it knows how many people are taking that route, so it knows who's going to be there and when they're going to be there.
Well, it could. There's currently no reservation system, but they have the ability to do that. They could collect that information if they wanted to.
Right.
But this is cool because you're up here in the Seattle area because you were going to pick up the Raise 3D machine that I gave to Jerry for a bit.
Yeah, Barnacles.
So an N2 Plus. It fits in your Tesla with the back seats down. That's just amazing. But
with room to spare.
Yeah, with
the
plenty of room to spare.
The trip up and the trip down will cost you $0 in any sort of fuel.
$0, yeah.
Because the supercharging is just free.
I mean, how cool is that, right?
Well, I just think about it, and if I pay...
I mean, almost 800 miles.
$40 for a tank of gas, that'll get me between 300 and 400 miles.
Yeah.
And so that's $80 to $100 each way, depending on the route I take. Mm-hmm. And you could do that every day, and it wouldn't cost you a penny.
Yeah, I could. There's a lot of dispute around what frequent too much supercharging would do. There's an argument. It's not an argument. The battery management is a big part of any piece of electronics. You know that if you are constantly discharging and charging your laptop, it will not last as long.
Sure, the battery gets a memory.
Yes, it can get a memory. It can wear on it. And obviously, when you're supercharging, you are pushing a massive amount. I'm talking about almost 400 volts at 400 amp, upwards of up to 150 kilowatts.
It's
of power.
A big fat wire.
It's a big fat wire. It's a lot of power all at once, and there is some strain on the battery if you take it. Not only if you're charging at that speed, but then going all the way to full. So you're better off a lot of times only charging to say 80%,
and then do it a trickle.
Yeah,
or
and then so that like common.
Does it know this because it's got battery management? So does it know the life of your battery?
It does. In fact, Tesla collects an insane amount of telemetrics. Is that the right?
Telemetry.
Like telemetry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Not telemetry.
Telemetrics.
Telemetry.
Telemetry. Thank you.
Telemetry.
Telemetry.
Daedalus. And Daedalus, potato. And they have a ton of information on what you're doing, and probably more than they even reveal. That
I'm sure
that they see. But they knowing what you're doing and how potentially abusive to the car you're being and all that stuff. They have that information. And the car itself will actually warn you if you charge to 100% too often. It says, hey, you know what? If you don't need to, consider bringing it back to 80% because it'll last longer. Or, when you're doing the launch control or the ludicrous mode stuff or all that stuff, it warns you before you go into that. Doing this repeatedly will have more wear and tear on the car. So
then what does a new battery look like for a Tesla?
What does it look like?
Meaning, is there a cost? Is there a warranty? Is there?
Yeah.
How long does it take?
Certainly there's a cost.
Do they just give you a new car when you pay for it? Or?
I wish. No. So the last time I did research on this, and there's probably people going to jump on this because it may even be different right now. But the pack. So I have an 85 kilowatt hour. I want to say the pack is 10 to 12 grand for a brand spanking new or a replacement that they're going to do.
Okay.
As I understand it, that's coming down, but I haven't had to price it. When I bought the car, I bought it pre-owned, and it came with a 4-year, 40,000 mile above where it was at the time. So I got the car with just about 40,000 miles on it.
What are you at now?
And I think I'm at 78.
Okay.
70. So I want to say I was at 42.
And how's your
Wait,
battery?
hold on. Let me do math because the guy I just had the tech come out to do a replacement, which is a cool thing to talk about as well.
Jeez.
And
come out to your house.
Yeah, they do mobile service. But he said my warranty was to 91,000 miles. So if I'm working backwards on that, that means it was at 51, not 40, high 40s when I was thinking. So, but I still have a little bit of room, and the tech
told you that when they came to your house.
Yes.
What does a mobile tech do?
They fix your car when it needs it.
No. I mean, I get that, but it's a Tesla. So is a mobile tech like a laptop? Is it like Geek Squad?
Sometimes. So in my case, so one of the cool things that the Model S does is it has these door handles that pop out to welcome you when you approach the car. I saw that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nifty, but when you think about it from a technical standpoint, we're like, well, that's something more to break at some point, and they do. The motors in them will wear out, and it's a known issue. And so at one point, my handle stopped presenting. That's what it's called. And so I got in touch with Tesla. The first time I did it, they didn't have it on now you can just request service on your app, on the phone app, and they'll schedule you right there. And like I'm telling you, man, everything is just so fluid with the process. So the tech came out, and it took him less than an hour. I got to watch. It was cool. He opened up the door so he could get to the door handle mechanism. Replaced in this case he replaced just a little gear because a gear had stripped. And it was back in action.
But wait, if a handle doesn't present itself, can you not get into your car?
In this case, I was able to get into my car. Well, you can certainly go open any of the other doors to get to the car,
Sure.
but it's inconvenient when it's the driver's side door to have to go around. And I learned pretty quickly that you can manually pop the handle out.
Oh, okay.
So I tied a little string on there for a couple days until the guy got in there so I could pull the thing open and it was still
Please
open
tell me
the
you took a
door.
picture of a string around your Tesla handle.
I probably did. I don't know where it is. It looks like, when you tie a string around your finger to remind you to do something, right?
That's
it was
amazing.
Just a little string there.
But by the way, you did set a reminder on my phone, and thanks for reminding me I was awesome.
That you're awesome.
Yeah.
I told Siri to remind Joel he was awesome.
So one of the things, though, that your car does that just enthralled me was the fart sound.
That's what you take away from the whole
So I know
Tesla
you
experience.
wanted me to drive it to get the performance. You wanted me to do the auto drive stuff. You were excited about that. Literally, I could make the car make random fart noises when I turned on the turn signal. And that
or manually, sure.
And sure, and you could press the scroll wheel. But that was probably one of the most, I don't know why that stuck with me so much, but sure, ludicrous mode, auto drive, but fart sounds when turn signals are enacted. That's
Sean, was that your takeaway when you took The car for the drive. We didn't even get into
No,
fart
no,
mode.
we didn't.
Emission,
We
it's
didn't
actually
get
called
into the cool
emissions
stuff.
mode. It's emission control.
Oh, because you're
Emissions.
putting out gas.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's amazing.
We didn't do anything cool like that. I mean, we just
poor Sean.
we just ruined a printer. So
We didn't do anything cool. We just did a launch. He got to
Launch
experience
control
the
with
full-
a raise machine in the back.
We're lucky we didn't pop the back windshield out.
Well, you could have requested service with the app to replace the
could have.
windshield, right?
It
Can
probably
oh
took
yeah,
a
is
couple
it a
weeks.
Tesla windshield in the back, or can it be replaced by
Well,
one of
the
those people in the
auto
parking
glass.
lots?
So, auto glass companies and stuff are catching up now, where they're OEMs for.
Oh, really?
they can
Okay,
handle
okay.
parts. Yeah.
I've heard that you can't get a tire replaced on a Tesla. Is that true?
You can't.
You can't get. You have to, like, if a rim gets hurt, you can't put an aftermarket rim. It has to be a Tesla rim. I've heard that.
Well, so you're talking about replacing the whole wheel?
I don't, well, okay. The Lightspeed, Steven, he had his Tesla, and he was driving from Arizona to Washington.
Okay.
Somewhere in Oregon, he hit a bump. I think it was Oregon, or along the
Okay.
way,
So he
and it
bent the
dented
wheel.
the rim,
Okay.
and he couldn't just.
Well, there's
go
no
get-
spare.
Right, there's no spare.
There's no spare.
Which I think is interesting.
Yeah, it is, but it's actually so. But you're asking, can you not replace? You have to replace it with a Tesla wheel?
Is that true?
No, I know that it's not, because I've seen Tesla modders that will put like M5 wheels or whatever.
Really? Okay.
There's still a standard wheel and
I would
size,
imagine
and
so.
but there's spacing and stuff. I'm sure there's ideal wheels and ideal spacing to allow for what you need. But
Maybe
there
it
are
was that
aftermarket
wasn't.
wheels.
Maybe that wasn't a lot. Maybe they didn't have a replacement handy or something.
That
I
could
don't know.
well be,
Okay.
but I just had the tires. So one of the downsides of the whole thing is that it's a very heavy car, and it is rough.
it's like 5,000 pounds, right? Something like
Jeez.
that.
It's
Really?
closer to 6.
Oh,
actually,
6,000?
Yeah,
Wow.
the battery pack is very heavy on the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
But it burns through tires as a result of that. Pretty,
How many times have you replaced the tires?
I've only replaced them once.
How much it cost?
Just under $1,000.
Oh, not terrible for.
It was $900. It was $900.
I mean,
but it was much sooner than I had to on any other car.
I see.
And they have specific tires that they want you to use because they have like lower rolling resistance, so that the mileage is better.
Got to be able to
So-
grip when you launch.
Well, there's that too. But I just went down to America's Tire Center, and they can get.
Oh, really? Perfect.
They're good. They're Goodyear tires. The stock ones. They're just like a green specific EV tire for low rolling
Okay.
resistance. Yeah.
One of these days, when you're in the app,
Yeah.
I want you to request service and say your fart sounds aren't working.
Fart sounds are no longer
Can you-
working.
I don't know. That'd be funny. That'd be
I'm sure
terrible.
somebody at Tesla would get a good laugh out of that.
So listen,
so sorry.
we're nearing the end.
Yeah.
It's been a fun
Is that where-
conversation.
is that where
We've
you wanna
nerded
leave
out-
it? Yeah.
We've nerded out
Yeah.
about tech and where you started. We've nerded out about Tesla and your drive. But honestly, what does the next 12 months look like for you and Repkord and what you're doing?
Wow. If I only knew, right?
Well, I know it's really hard to judge right about now.
We're in
but
we're in
what
COVID.
What are you hoping
we're in COVID
happens?
times.
What are you
What
hoping?
am I hoping happens? So this has been a great, and I don't want to say terrible year, but it's been a very roller coaster ride of a year, right? So we have been experiencing COVID, and I think as a result of that, there have been fantastic times where I think a lot of people are at home and they're getting into the hobby of 3D printing, and so I would see some great orders compared to where I was at this time last year, and then it feels like it would cycle down and it would be unbelievably slow for a while, and so it's made forecasting really difficult and all that stuff, but this was my year. So people should know that up until 2020, Repkord was a side gig for me, and this was going to be my year to go full time with it. So I've been a web developer for the past 15 plus years freelancing, so I handed off my last client this year, and I said I'm going to make a go of it. And so that's how I ended up. And I started out in a co-working space, and then after the Shields Up thing we talked about wrapped up, I actually got my first shop space. So I got out of the garage, got out of the co-working space, and so a lot of progress has been made. And so it's like I got better equipment. I can produce a much higher quantity of the rep boxes that I make, and and I have 2 employees now as well. And so it's like I'm learning what it means not just to make a product, but to grow a business.
Yeah.
And so
that's cool.
My
man.
hope is that we, sales continue to do well. We're going into the busy season with Christmas and New Year's and stuff like that, and that we can release some new product and we can continue to grow the business.
That's fantastic, man. I wish you the best of luck. Well, with that in mind, how about this? 30 seconds. The floor is yours. Why don't you tell people everything they need to know about finding you and buying any of your wonderful products that you offer?
Yeah, so again, my company's called Repkord. It's repkord.com.
Not
You
R3.
rebel. You
Not
rebel.
R3.
It is not R3. So, my logo looks that way, and Tom Sandlatter likes to call me R3cord. But no, it's repkord.com, Repkord. That's home of the Rep Box, and we're lucky enough to be partnered with some other great 3D print suppliers and stuff. So we have accessories and nozzles and PTFE tube and all kinds of other great stuff on there too. And we're trying to add more things by the day. So check it out.
And you have the farm, right?
We have the farm now, so we've been really excited to support Prusa's efforts with everything. And so we have a great print farm of 24 Prusa Mark IIIs, which is fantastic and has allowed us to expand. I have 3 laser cutters now, and so we're doing a lot of cool stuff with that too. But yeah, check it out and come back and see what's new, and hopefully 2021 will bring some pretty cool new exciting stuff.
That sounds like a great. I sure hope it does.
I sure hope it does too.
Well, hey, listen, thanks for joining us, Alan.
Thanks for having me, Joel.
The Pooch, that was a lot of fun. Thanks for nerding out with us here on the inaugural Technically Nerdy podcast. If you have other suggestions for people you might want to hear, let us know in the comments. But for now, I think we're going to sign out and use this default music to kind of go out. Hey, Pooch, thanks, man.
Thanks, Joel.
Thanks, Sean.
Hey, no problem.
This was
Sean,
the
love you, man.
Technically Nerdy podcast, and we'll see you on the next one.